Hello, it's Prince Easy coming at you again. What's up, Zion? What's up, world? So, we're gonna talk about democracy, right? Because at this point, it has become a controversial term, so to speak, right? It has been a controversial term, and both sides, those people who are for it and people who are against it, know the shortcomings of this particular system, so to speak. And as the youth and the Africans are waking up, these discussions are important to be had, right? Because we weren't really in a position to have these conversations in the first place, so to speak, right? I'm not saying that there are no people that have had these conversations, but they were not popular conversations, so to speak, right? They were not popular conversations. There were conversations that were shunned upon, so to speak, right? But given time, people's opinions have changed about it, you know. So, as usual, I'm gonna present to you what I have in this here piece of paper, so as we can enlighten ourselves and actually be in a better position to make decisions in the near future that will benefit us all, right? And just like the video yesterday and the day before that and the day before that, I'm not only talking about the country where I'm from, I'm talking about all of my friends out there, right? And those are the people who I'm talking to, and there are many from many continents. So it's just the conversations that we have, right? And I might use examples from my country, but that does not take away from that fact that it is a world issue. It is a world issue, right? It is a world issue, right? So I titled it the delusion of an impervious system, right? A system that cannot be infiltrated, right? Especially for countries that are fighting for their freedom to regain their independence, right? And that does not only mean Africa, right? It means a lot of countries, believe me, brothers and sisters, right? I shall explain why I call it a delusion as we get on with this conversation, right? So, I'm not gonna start from the beginning and explain what democracy is and what is all of that, right? I'm just gonna get into it, right? So, the needs right now, or rather the solutions to what we currently have as a system of finding leadership and actually executing nationwide agendas, so to speak, right? And like I said many times, I'm not against the government. I do believe that the government is an inevitability, right? Societies form governments. The larger they get, they form governments in order to streamline whatever plan they have, and it's an efficient way to execute said plan, right? Regardless of whatever it is. right? So there is a need for an independent voting body, right? And of course, there is a cry out there that the people should be involved when it comes to decision making, right? When it comes to decision making, right? And some need some parts of the government to be independent, right? To operate on themselves. And of course, people have come up with solutions, right? When it comes to an independent voting body, right? I personally think that does not exist, right? Okay, remember, we are talking about a system that cannot be influenced, right? Because we are trying to get people who we voted for, right? And if we come up with a new system, right, we can talk about in general, right? People go into voting stations, right? People send in mail, they mail in their votes. Others vote digitally, right? All of these are solutions to one single problem, right? And of course, as of recent, a Tanzanian came out, right, Gwajima, and made a very controversial point. He said basically the organ of security needs to be autonomous and not under the influence of politicians when it comes to the issues of national interests, right? And he believes that these people are the ones that are in a position to better protect our resources, right? And he was thinking that they should be independent, right? I do understand where he's coming from, to be honest with you, right? Because for instance, if we look at Europe, they have basically outsourced their security. They have outsourced their sovereignty to this other independent body, right? And this independent body has now come under the influence of very powerful influences, right? The military, the banking, right? Now the so-called reconstruction, right? So there are these big influences with a lot of wealth and connection, right? Because they do not rotate around like politicians and whatnot, so they can have an agenda for a really long time and stay with it and execute it. And they have become a problem, basically, right? We have seen these unelected officials come out and basically disqualify people who are running for presidential elections. They have even gone further as to, what do they say, nullify results, because the person that won did not possess the right mentality that they wanted, right? These big corporations. So these are the things they do, right? And We as Africans, we know this to be true, right? We have seen over and over these things happening, right? And the other solution, there are basically two solutions to fixing our democracy that people boil down to, right? The first one is that elections and basically the entirety of the process, right? From vetting the contestants to actually them getting what they deserve when it comes to vote, to their votes, so to speak. And the second solution that people see out there is some pocket money. That's what they believe, right? They believe that if the security apparatus of a nation is paid properly, then they will not be easily corruptible, so to speak, right? And if we create an independent body that will deal only with voting, that also is the solution that they state, right? So we have two solutions: a way to vote and money. That's what they believe, right? So, what is the reality, right? What is the reality? Are any of these solutions feasible, so to speak, right? Are they feasible, right? Well, I'll say this, right? I know our enemy and how he operates, or they operate rather. And there are important aspects that we need to address, right? We have money, fear, blackmail, murder, bonds, right? Okay, and these power interests, like I've explained prior, right? Well, these are the mechanisms that they deploy in a nation in order to have their way, right? And they are not in shortage of any of this, so to speak, right? They are not in shortage of any of this, right? They have a lot of money. They have various ways to carry out blackmail operations, right? They can commit murder, right? We have seen African legends being taken out many times, right? Just because all of these other means did not work, right? That's it. That's where it gets to, right? So others stand strong. Well, others they quit, right? To save themselves the trouble. They have families and kids and stuff, right? They do not want to, right? Because there are some nations out here when it comes election time, right? There are these interests sometimes when they are too powerful, they even kidnap the children of these people in order to have them in their pocket, so to speak, right? Well, these always work. These always work. And if they don't work, well, murder. That's just the reality of the situation that we have, right? And that brings me to the other problem, right? the issue of the presidency, right? People see that the presidency is a, I don't know, a sure way to ensure that we are safe from interference and to ensure basically all of our interests are protected, right? Well, let me give you an example. I have a watch here in my wrist, right? Focus, focus, focus. You see that? Well, that is like the government, right? That is like, wait, is it upside down? No, it's not. Right? That is the government right there. It's a watch. It's working, right? It's working. And we don't really care for the mechanisms of how it works. But when that arrow stops going, then we notice, right? It's unfortunate, but that is how we were trained to see the world, basically. Right? Because the reality is, when a system is working fine, you're not supposed to notice anything, right? So the focus has been to do whatever it takes to create this facade, right? I've talked about this many, many times. The focus has been to create this facade of actually a functioning government, right? A functioning system, rather than actually being a functioning, well-maintained system, right? Run by people who actually care for their people, okay? This is how we are trained, right? This is how we are trained to see governments, right? When they do something great and nice, it goes under the radar. We say that's what they're supposed to do, right? They don't need praise for that, right? And if they do something out of the ordinary, then people start to notice, just like the watch. When it stops ticking, now you have to make yourself familiar with the mechanisms, right? And I think it's important. It's important that people make themselves familiar with the mechanism, right? Because there is a need for us to participate in the supervision of our own resources. We cannot outsource this responsibility, so to speak. We have to be a player, right? It has to become a player. We have to become a player in the safeguarding of our own resources and determining our own future, right? So all I'm saying is we should wake up from the delusion of how things work. Okay? We should wake up from the delusion of how things work. Right? Money, fear, murder, blackmail, that is the system for you. Okay? That is the system for you. These powerful interests. Maybe it's the oil cartel. Right? Maybe it's the drugs cartel. Many, many interests exist out there. And these interests have, just like I showed you yesterday, they had a guy go to clean up Honduras so as their farmers can have their way with the land. Right? So security is important when it comes to this regard, right? Security is extremely important, right? Extremely important, right? But also, what is also important is self-awareness, right? Because, to be honest, with many world leadership, I see a lot of self and not a lot of awareness, rather self-awareness, right? So we need to be self, know who we are, right, and understand who we are, and have awareness of what is around us and how can we affect for the betterment of humanity what is around us. So how can we make use of it, right? And this cannot be outsourced to some small group of people, right? And if it does, then like the clock, it stops working and people notice, right? Trouble arises and then change follows, right? But for these people, it's not even change, it's adaptation. They're adapting, right? So self-awareness is important, right? And what is also more important is the aspect of resilience, right? I have seen great many advice out there from various peoples and groups of peoples about the lack of long-term planning and all of these factors that people keep bringing up. But I tell you this, before we get to that point, I believe that what needs to be secured first is making our nations, our peoples resilient, right? Resiliency is important. So self-awareness and resilience, these are the things that I think especially we as Africans need to put our focus on, right? Having resilient economies, not perfect economies, not booming economies, but rather a resilient economy. I'd rather have a resilient economy than a booming economy, to tell you the least, right? A resilient food system, a resilient health system, right? A type of system that can withstand all of the issues that may be foreseen or unforeseen, right? So the dynamics of power in the nations are very complicated, right? They are very complicated, right? Very, very complicated. There's a lot of moving things inside. So my advice is exactly that, right? This is just a first video talking about this subject. It's not gonna be the last, okay? So my advice is have a lot of self-awareness and build resilience. That is what's more important in order for us to have a straight future. So I would like to put a pin on it.